Most Claude Cowork setups fail silently. And here's what I mean by that. It doesn't break outright. It still keeps running, but it's going to cost you in so many different ways. It's going to cost you in tokens, it's going to cost you in time. Sometimes you feel that it doesn't remember things, it gets dumber and lazier at the same time. Maybe it even starts compacting when you least want it to. And all of these point to an issue with setup. So I was making the same mistakes and I've spent hundreds of hours untangling myself from the mess that I made. So this video is a setup that I wished someone had handed me on the very first day. So I'm going to show you how I rebuilt the whole thing from scratch so the system gets better every week. And this isn't based on one gold standard or one particular way of doing it. What I'm going to show you is based on countless tutorials and lots of trial and error. So here's the plan. I'm going to give you one simple map of how a Cowork setup fits together. And then we'll walk it top to bottom, 5 levels. So here's the big picture view of the 5 levels. And on top is you, the CEO or the director. Then you have Claude, your employee. Level 1 are your global instructions, how you want Claude to talk to you. And this, you set it once and it's going to apply everywhere across chat or code or Cowork. So we'll dive into a little bit detail about what goes into each of these levels in just a bit. So level 2 is your operating system or your command center, your mission control, however you want to call it. One folder that holds your entire business. Level 3, inside this folder is your Claude.md file. Level 4, your desks or your departments, one for each area that you work in. And level 5 is your projects, the things that start and end. So keep this map in mind. Every part of the video is just as zooming into one level, top to bottom. One quick thing before we start, every template that I show you today is in a Claude starter kit. I have the link in the description so you can go and grab it and build along with me. So level 1, the outermost layer, this is your global instructions. There's a little box in your settings and it's how you want Claude to talk to you, whether that's in chat, Cowork, or code. If you want Cowork specific instructions, it lives right down here. But for now, let's focus on the global instructions. So here's the mistake that people make. They typically never touch it. So that's like leaving Claude exactly as it comes out of the box, which is a bit of a yes man, wordy, agreeable. It'll cheer you on your worst idea as enthusiastically as your best one. So it's pretty much what Claude does. And that's not what we want, and we're going to fix that. So, what can you do that turns Claude from a cheerleader into a thinking partner? When I was researching on how to do this the best way, I landed on 8 things worth putting in here. And I'll walk you through why each one earns its place. All right, so the first one, who you are, and importantly, how technical are you? It's very likely that when you are working with Claude, you're going to be setting a lot of things up. So I felt that this was important to put in there. All right, especially if you're not someone who is as technical or as tech savvy as I am. So you want to put this so Claude knows how to pitch things at the right level. So the second thing is how you want it to talk to you. So for me, I don't like a huge wall of text and I don't really just like people listing options. I want recommendations and why it's recommending a particular solution to me. 3, and most people never set this. How do you want things explained to you? And it's not a one size fits all. I am a systems thinker, so mine says framework first. Show me how the different parts connect before you give me the details. Yours might be the opposite. You might learn best from an example. So it's good to tell Claude how you want this to be. 4 is the one that was missing from mine. Felt the how you wanted to approach the work. So for instance, I don't want a finished answer dropped on me. I want the steps, the trade-offs, what might go wrong. So when I added this into my instructions, I felt like Claude was thinking with me. I felt like I had a thinking partner. Now, the next one is your critical rules. This is a section that switches off the yes man. Never make things up, push back when I'm wrong, give honest, objective feedback, never fabricate examples. And Claude has a way of wanting to please you. So you can be sure it is going to fabricate things if you're not going to mention this upright. Now, two quick things depending on your work. If numbers are a big part of your work, tell it to actually look at the data before it concludes anything. And also ask it to double check and ask when something is unclear instead of guessing. Now, the last one, when you correct it or if something works, ask it to offer you to save that. Otherwise, you're just going to be fixing the same thing every single week. All right. So, this is one tiny way that you can get the setup to get smarter instead of staying stuck. Now, one thing to notice here is that we are not adding anything about what you sell, who your clients are. Those do not go in here. They go into a context folder, which I'll mention in just a bit. Now that global instructions are out of the way, let's go to level 2. So, level 2 is your OS. Name it something simple, all right? My business, command center, mission control, whatever you want to call it. Point Cowork at this folder. Now, inside your OS, everything sorts into 4 different buckets. So think of your OS or your command center as a company. You are the director, like I mentioned. Claude is the employee. Your desks are your departments. These are the areas that you work in all year round. They don't come and go. For instance, you are always going to be sending out your newsletter to your email list. You have a blog, perhaps, or you always are going to be creating content for your YouTube channel. Or maybe you're constantly going to be pitching other podcasts because you want to get visibility. These are things that happen year round, which is why they are called desks or departments. Now, your projects are a different thing. These are things with a deadline, like a book launch or a campaign. When they're done, you archive them. Context files, these are like a library or a handbook. So it is information about your voice, your offers, okay, about your right fit customer or client. And these are things that Claude reads, but doesn't necessarily rewrite unless you tell it to. Think of it like the company handbook. So, this is what makes Claude know how you think and how you write. This is what switches you from creating generic output to something that sounds more like how you would work and think. Now, let's talk about how these things relate to each other and how are they different. Your global instructions are what is true of you as a person. So they stretch across chat, cowork, Claude. This is your personality, how you learn, how you like to be spoken to. It's true no matter what you're working on. The middle is your business, your command center. Your main Claude.md lives in here. So I like to think of it as like the mother Claude.md. All right. What is true of the whole operation? What are the house rules? And the narrowest is the desk or the department. What is true of just that one area? So if you're confused or what goes where, think of it like this: true of me everywhere, that would be your global instructions. True of the whole business, that would be your Claude MD, or what I like to call the mother Claude MD. Okay. And then true of just this one area, that would be your desk or your department. And each desk and each department gets its own Claude.md. Now, I keep mentioning Claude.md. What exactly is your Claude.md? Let me start with the mistake because it's the most common one there is, and I made this too. Many people turn, me included, the Claude.md into a junk drawer. Rules, facts, little notes, things to remember, everything is just piled into one file. And what we do is we just keep adding to Claude.md because this is the file that Claude loads automatically every single time without fail. So, what happens when you stuff everything in there is that you're going to have something that's maybe, I don't know, 300, 400, 500 lines long shouting for attention. And then Claude can't actually tell what matters and it starts ignoring things. So a bloated Claude MD is a token sucker. And I've been there and I've done that. So a well-known AI researcher, Karpati, says to keep your Claude MD to under 50 lines. So the point isn't the exact number, it is the discipline. Every line in your Claude.md has to earn its spot. So, what actually goes into your Claude.md? Think of it as you telling Claude, here's how I like things done. Here's what you need to know. These are the rules of the house. Here are a couple of things that are worth having. right? Your rules, your conventions, your routing map, which is just a list of your desks and when to load each one. How to add a new desk as you grow, what are the reference files that you're pointing to, and so on. Now, this is what mine looks like right now. And this was in no way how it looked like even a couple months ago. Your Claude.md will evolve and so will mine. But this is just to give you an idea of how you could do it, especially if you think that you've got too many things in there and you want to sort that out. Each desk or each department gets its own Claude.md too. It's smaller and it's just about that one area. So, for instance, in my YouTube desk, I've got a purpose, what this desk is for, what is in it, a quick map of the key files in there, what are the steps that I follow, are there any specific rules that are specific to this desk, what are the different files that the desk leans on and when to read them. Now, there's one more thing people try to cram into Claude.md and that doesn't belong there. And that is the deep details, like your full voice guide, your long process documents. That's what a reference folder is for. It only gets read when Claude actually needs it. So this is how you keep your Claude.md clean and short instead of dumping everything in there. Now, if you want kind of the starting point, I do have a Claude.md template in the kit below as well, and you can grab that. Now, let's talk about desks or departments. So, simplest way to picture it is you have got your company, and each company has its own departments. So the marketing department has its own way of working, your finance department has its own way of working, and so on. Business owner or marketer, your first desks are probably your channels. You've got your blog or your newsletter desk, a YouTube desk, a LinkedIn desk. If you've got different offers, you probably have a desk or a folder for that. Now, each one has specific rules that apply only there. So you keep adding desks as you grow. You may start with 3 or 4, and later on, you may add maybe sponsorships or speaking. And a mature setup will probably have a lot more desks or folders. Now, each of those individual desks or departments will get their own Claude.md. So, what goes into a Claude.md for a department or a desk? It has the workflow, it has the conventions, the references, what are the things that is true to that particular desk. Now, let's talk about projects. So, project is anything with a finish line. So, a launch, a funnel, a free challenge. That's what makes it different from a desk. Now, the part I wish I'd understood earlier, a project is where work happens over time. And two questions come up every time you sit back down. Where were we and why did we decide something? So this is where adding these two small files next to Claude.md can help. You overwrite it as things move. So it's always current and always short. Decisions.md is a record of the choices you made and why. You never edit it, you only add to it. So it is one dated entry per decision. You read it, and when you're about to reopen something you already settled, you kind of like, oh yeah, we already decided on this. And why did we decide on this? Now, you don't need to update these by hand. You set the rules in the project's Claude.md. So at the end of a session, it refreshes the status. When we make a real decision, add it to decisions. These are things that you can add into your Claude.md. So after that, Claude keeps them current on its own, and you don't have to ask. Now, one key thing is, what about memory? Now, I left memory out because it's one thing that I kind of got wrong. And everywhere I read, I was reading lots of conflicting information about memory. Okay, so mid rebuild, I opened chat and I asked Claude how its own memory works. Some of what it told me actually surprised me. Okay, so I'm going to share my chat conversation with Claude. So one question I asked was, if I created a memory.md, will you read it automatically? Because there were some of the things that I was hearing. And what it said was that lo and behold, it doesn't work that way. So if you name a file memory.md, it's not going to hook into an auto memory system that Claude has. So Claude.md is auto loaded and we write that file, but memory.md is Claude's own space. It's Claude's own notebook of us and the work that we do. One other thing is, how do you remember anything in between sessions? And it actually said that in between sessions, I actually have amnesia. And when this conversation ends, it's gone. But what carries over is what's written to your files, right? What's written to the disk. Now, the next thing I asked Claude was, okay, how do you decide what goes in your memory file? And it says that, okay, it comes down to three specific tests: durable, non obvious, changes how it works. So, durable is, will this still matter next week or next session? Preferences are your standing instructions. If it's already written down, then Claude is not going to save that. That is how Claude decides on what to save. So here's the thing that ties all these different pieces that I mentioned together. So remember what Claude just told me. Between sessions, it doesn't remember anything. The conversation kind of just evaporates. Only the files survive, which means all the scaffolding that we're building today isn't just kind of decoration or a nice to have. The files literally help Claude remember. Putting those things together, you have a tool that opens a folder and is instantly caught up. Now, what happens when you're midway through a session and you're afraid that's going to start compacting, or you need to start work because you want to continue it with it next day? What I would do is I have Claude brief a fresh chat with a handoff. Here's a prompt that you can use. So typically, I'm going to ask it, take note of the goals, the decisions, why, where we left off, and then I keep them dated in a handoff folder. So when I am wanting to resume work, I'm going to ask it to read that handoff, and then we pick right back where we are. So here's how the whole thing looks in one single picture. Now, my setup looks nothing like it did 9 months ago, and yours will evolve at the same time, as would mine. So, what you can do right now is maybe start with one single desk or department. Don't try to change the entire thing, especially if it feels overwhelming. Just start with one single layer. And if you do want a head start, like I mentioned, I do have a Cowork starter kit. It has the exact prompts and the templates that I mentioned in this video so that you can build right along with me. And the link is in the description.